this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Wasabi is purpose-built to free your business from skyrocketing storage costs and fees. Wasabi is the go-to provider for professional and collegiate sports teams around the world. Check out Wasabi's AI-enabled intelligent media storage, Wasabi Air, to the industry's only cloud storage service with triple protection against cyber criminals. Wasabi, driving innovation in data storage for up to 80% less than market competition. Try for free at wasabi.com. Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage, proud partner of the iHeart Podcast Network.
March is here and Uber Eats is delivering deals all month long. Score big savings on all the delicious food you need to fuel your sports fandom. Whether you're ordering in or hosting the whole crew, Uber Eats is serving up deals on wings, burgers, pizza, all from your favorite restaurants, plus snacks from top stores. Perennial powerhouse, underdog, however the madness unfolds, these deals keep it going all month long. Visit the Uber Eats app for all the latest deals and start saving today.
Steve Palazzolo is a co-host of Check the Mic who does consulting work for various teams across professional and college football. He previously worked for PFF for well over a decade. He's an East Coast dad, a former professional baseball player, and he's almost definitely taller than you are. These are his late-round perspectives.
I saw our Twitter DMs went back to at least 2015, so I'm assuming maybe slightly before that, various interactions.
So it's been like a decade at least, right? Yeah. And this is the first show that we've done together, I think.
It is, yeah. So a long time coming. This is a big one.
I know, man. Very rarely, though, too, do I meet because we got to meet each other IRL at the Super Bowl at Radio Row this year. And I knew you were tall, but like you were like another. It's like when you go there and you're walking by and like Derrick Henry walks by and you're like, oh, wow, he's even bigger. The one that got me this year was Cam Hayward. Like
oh, yeah.
Like, you know that he's massive, but I guess because they're down a lot, right? Like ready to, and like you don't, and then you think to yourself, like, how can an offensive lineman possibly, like, how can another human possibly block this man, right? Like that was but then I saw you and I'm like, you're even bigger than I thought you would be.
I get that a lot. It's funny because co-host Sam and I talk about this all the time. Like when you're on Radio Row and you see Ryan Leaf walk by, or when we've been around guys like Boomer Esiason, it's like, I kind of get why NFL teams get swayed by the in-person. Like, this guy looks like an NFL QB, and then like Bryce Young rolls in or whatever. It's like, I kind of get why they get influenced a little bit by that, even though I don't think it's smart overall.
That was, exactly. That was my, cause like I've always been comped physically to Joe Flacco, like jokingly, like people always just say, and it's really just like the thick eyebrows and the hair. And we also went through a very similar timeline journey wise of like a glow up, if you will. Like we neither of us cared about our looks in our 20s. And then, we started to care more as we got married and started having families and like had to start, you have to start caring a little bit as you get older and stuff. And, I got a picture with him at Radio Row just for the memes, right?
Yeah, and that's great.
And like that's a perfect example where you're like, oh my God, like I'm 6'1", I'm not like short, I'm 6'1", And Flacco's standing there. I'm like, this guy is gigantic. He's huge. Yeah. It's crazy.
It is. It's great. It is eye-opening, even for me. But, seeing everybody in person. But I do get that a lot, bigger than I am on social media.
Well, so you have I want to talk about your background a little bit. I like to do this with every new Perspectives guest of just like how you are doing what you're doing today. But you have an interesting background because you were a pitcher and stuff, right? Back in the day. Yeah. How did this all come to be for you?
Man, there was a lot to it. But, I went, I was a baseball player my entire life, grew up wanting to be a major league shortstop first until I outgrew that. Yeah. Pivoted to pitching, but I went to UMass Lowell Division II school, had some success, but went undrafted. Eventually played independent professional baseball, got signed by the Brewers and bounced around between the Brewers, Giants, and Mariners, and then back to independent ball. But I was always, all throughout that time, that was like the beginning. I was right in the middle of the Moneyball era, and I was always very analytical, too analytical to pitch. I mean, I was out there like the year that I went from AA to AAA. I had so much, second and third, one out, get out of it type of deal. And I was walking too many guys and I was like too self-aware of my own weaknesses. And anyway, I topped out at AAA and, toward the end of my career, needed more of an escape. It's fun. It sounds strange, but like there's a lot of pressure on you. Like I'm AAA, like you're close to,
of course,
living your dream.
Isn't that, don't they say, like, isn't that like a ridiculously difficult life too, just in general? Like,
oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're on the road. I mean, you have 144 games in 154 days.
Not getting paid nearly enough and stuff. Yeah.
I never made more than 3,000 a month.
Crazy.
Over 5 months. And that was a lot. I mean, that was a lot for even compared to what I started at. And so not a lot of money, but it was great. I mean, I would never change anything. It was fun.
Sure.
But I needed like stress relief type of thing. And so I just loved football, and I just dove into football and studying. And I always loved it anyway. But long story short, I used PFF as a fan in 2009. And as a poor minor leaguer, I couldn't afford when they upped their prices to like $100 for the year at one point, and they were just starting to sell to like a team or whatever.
Yeah.
So I got so mad, sent an email to the owner, founder Neil. He's like, sorry, man, business. And so I eventually, the following year, 2011, I was like, all right, I just need this information. I'm just going to see if they need help. I said, do you need help? They said, yeah, always need help. Here's a practice game. Go chart where everybody lines up on the field. Need to be 99.5% accuracy. And I said, all right, I'll do it. I had a three days of rain delays my last year playing. I cranked out this game. Took me forever, but I did 99+% accuracy. They're like, oh, it's good enough. Come on, you're on part-time. And that's pretty much it. Like, I'd finished my baseball career, started doing part-time PFF data collection, and just loved it. That, started to do some writing. And then by 2012, I was getting married and retiring from baseball and pivoting to a football career. They had a full-time job for me, and I learned the grading process, and then became, employee number 6 at PFF, and went from there.
Yeah. And you were at PFF for a while. I mean, do people still just like refer to you as PFF Steve? Like, do they just
less and less? But I get a lot of, like, even on YouTube, you get a lot of people, these PFF guys, they always hate my team and everything, but less, right. Than I did before. But yeah, 13 years at PFF.
I'm assuming that some of that like follows you to a degree in terms of like, obviously your analysis was embedded with that, and you still, I'm sure, reference a lot of PFF stuff and what they're doing now in general. I do want to kind of touch on that because I think it's important, because there's just haters for no reason that are out there when it comes to the PFF stuff. Like, what would you say if someone's just like, this is made up, or this is, because obviously, and I know that you're not there now, but obviously that was a big foundational piece for you in what you're doing now and with your career and who you are within the space. And so I do think it's an important thing to at least throw out there of like, that is who you are as an analyst, or at least where you've stemmed from. And so like, how would you kind of speak to that person who might be skeptical?
Yeah, it's a good description that you use too. It's almost like if people follow Kurt Warner on X, and he's always lamenting how offenses are run these days, but it's because he came up through a certain style, and he loves his style, and he knows his style, and he thinks that's the best style. And so I have elements of that where I learned the game through this PFF lens, this analytical production grading lens. And for people who don't think it's real, I mean, it's real. I mean, it's 300-page rubric, and we're talking rules around the 6 scenarios when the right guard and right tackle are down blocking the 3 technique on power. What does a 0 grade look like? What does a plus 0.5 look like? What does a -1 look like? And you're training people up just like you're training them in a system to know your language and to know what they're looking for. And then the conversations are like, hey, I think this throws a plus 0.5. Well, I think it's a +1. We're going to disagree a little bit. Let's figure it out. Let's look historically. Every time there's a 15-yard deep out against this coverage, what did we do historically? Oh, we gave it a 0.5. Most of the time it's a 0.5, right? So it's a system that people have to buy into, have to learn, and it's consistent as you possibly can, grading every player on every play. So I still believe in the process and the concept and the idea. And I think where it gets confusing is you have to roll it up into one number and say, this guy's a 79 and this guy's an 84. And there's so much nuance and context that goes into that. And that's what's fun about football to me.
Agreed.
Is the nuance and the context around it.
Yep.
Not this guy's an 84 and this guy's an 81. Therefore this guy's better.
Right.
And I think that's what gets lost. And not everybody has time to understand the nuance, which I get.
Right.
But I think that's where the fun is. And I think that's where you lose some of the nuance behind it.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I run into the same problems because like you're trying to make data consumable in some way, and you have to do it in that score fashion or some way of making it consumable. But then,
Right.
there's going to be a lot of people who are like, oh, I only care about that score. And so therefore I'm going to lose all that context. But, you're someone like myself who I'm just like, the entire point of my job is to provide that context, right?
I'll never forget, like when Chris Collinsworth bought PFF and he flew us all out to Cincinnati, where I live now. And we had week-long meetings about, hey, it used to be a plus-minus system, right? The old PFF used to be, this guy's a plus 42 and this guy's a minus 26. But every scale was different. And Chris was like, we need a 0 to 100 system. Everybody knows 0 to 100, right? Yeah. Madden and this. And I said, well, even within that, Madden has more 90s than PFF does, right? So there's scales within the scale. Mm-hmm. So conveying context is always a challenge, especially if you're trying to do it in a one number system.
One thing I'll also say, just to kind of wrap this up, is that you will often see there's always one point in time. I think we've even DM'd about this, where there's always one point in time in the season. It's like week 10 or week 11 where something happens with it's usually quarterback, because people care about quarterback most. And there's like one grade that everyone's like, how did this happen? And then it becomes the talk of Twitter for that week, right? Like
clockwork.
Yeah. One thing that I would say about this though, too, is that if you think about it from the perspective of hundreds of players are being graded, and there's only arguments about a handful of them, does that not tell you that there's probably a lot of good going on with the process and how things are like, and there's a lot more agreement than disagreement. It's just that, as usual, we're disagreeing about the fraction of things that are going on, and that's what makes headlines and stuff.
Let me give you a different perspective on it too, because you're absolutely right. But and I don't work at PFF anymore. I don't need to advocate for the company. I'm glad I don't have to be a part of those arguments anymore. Right. But I believe in the process and the system, maybe more than anyone in the world, because I think that's useful, right? I think I might think it's the most useful. I might be the one who thinks it's more useful than anyone else in the world, is how I'll position it. PFF's trying to grade every player on every play. Every other level of analytics is usually trying to say, I'm isolating quarterbacks or I'm evaluating quarterbacks. And that's what I think actually makes it good, is when a quarterback gets a 50-yard touchdown, there's a chance it's the defense's fault. Is defense's fault. There's a chance it's the receiver's credit. There's a chance the quarterback deserves all the credit. And so the splitting of credit is where context also gets lost. And the fact that when you're watching, even just like offensive line coaches that we talk to, they're only watching their offensive linemen through their lens, not what the defense is necessarily trying to do. And the advantage that a PFF system, the concept has, is trying to see both sides of it and then assign credit. Hey, you're trying to do this job, but it's an easy job, say, because the defense is letting you do it, right? Rather than, oh, it's a win for the offensive lineman because that's how I taught him, right? So that's the other layer of nuance, is you're not trying to find like a QB evaluation system. You're trying to find a player evaluation system. And sometimes the QB's credit for the 50-yard touchdown is negligible, right? And I think that's where the advantage is to that type of system.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've been dealing with that with like expected point models for forever, since they came out, where it's like the feedback is always, whatever the metric is, whatever the model is, the feedback is always, well, this isn't capturing everything. And the response analytically should be like, I know, like we understand that, but at least PFF is taking that to a level where there's an attempt to, where there's not to say that it is, and anyone there would say that it's flawless, because I don't think anything would be in this game that's very complex. Right. But it's at least giving us something that does not exist, which is why, it's helpful. So yeah, I've been a backer for a while, and I've worked with people who weren't, which was always difficult on my end then to kind of hone in that narrative. But
I mean, just figure out where it helps you too. Yeah. Right? It might help, like for you, it might help you with running backs and not help you with receivers. Right. It might help you with edge rushers. Generally, if you're watching football, it doesn't help as well with safeties and linebackers. Yeah. So you have to know that too, and know how it helps and where the strengths and weaknesses lie. Yeah.
So with that being said, knowing your background a little bit and your journey, let's talk some ball here. So we just had, before, I want to get into a lot of prospect stuff, because that, 'tis the season, but we had an interesting free agency period, especially from a more of a fantasy football perspective. It is funny, after the discussion that went on Twitter this week, I won't name names, but the discussion of fantasy draft analysts versus real draft analysts and all this. And then lo and behold, you are the guest this week on Late Round Perspectives. But I think it's really important to have, I want to get the perspective of somebody who's not like only looking at this from a fantasy angle, whereas the audience obviously is thinking about it from that perspective. But from your angle and from your perspective, I want to talk about 3 players in particular here that, they weren't necessarily free agents, but there were trades that went down too. So we'll start with Kenneth Walker going to Kansas City. Aside from how good of an idea this was, or if the Chiefs should have gone after Jeremiah Love, whatever I don't need to get into that. I just want to talk about fit of Kenneth Walker in Kansas City and how you see that playing out, at least here in 2026.
It's an interesting fit, I would say, because the historic Mahomes Reed era, and then before Mahomes, the Reed era. How many times were people begging Andy Reid, run the ball, Andy, come on, what are you doing? And so they're just not a run first type of team. But the Chiefs have morphed a couple times now in the Mahomes era, right? They blow it up, they trade Tyreek Hill, they become a defensive minded team. So the one thing I'm keeping an eye on, I'm not predicting it necessarily, is this the next pivot for the Chiefs? Are they going to become more run heavy? Are they going to be more under center? Because on paper, running like a shotgun, wide zone, RPO heavy run game probably isn't great for Ken Walker. But if you get under center, run downhill a little bit more, maybe go a little bit more high volume, because Mahomes has those games where you're in the middle of the second quarter and he's like 17 for 22 and the backs have three runs, right. And then maybe they run with the lead in the second half and catch up. I do wonder if they're going to run the ball a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So overall, I like it. But if they stay the same, it's okay. He's not great in the pass game relative to some other running backs. So you might not, you'll get value there. It's the Chiefs. I think eventually they'll get back to putting up some points and he'll have touchdown opportunities in the whole thing. But I am interested to see. At other times they've said, hey, we can't let the O-line fail again. We attack the O-line. I wonder if they're saying we can't put all this pressure on Mahomes with not enough weapons. We are actually going to run the ball more. And if they're going to do that with Walker, who's great downhill, he's a home run hitter. He's always looking for home runs, but he also showed a little bit of like Le'Veon Bell-ish, super patience, working between the tackles. And I think Walker might be ready for his next, his best seasons coming up here if given the opportunity.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. The other thing too is, you look at who he's replacing and you look at the explosive runs of what Kenneth Walker, nothing. It's like you couldn't get probably more night and day.
I'm sorry, but it could be as simple as that, where they said, look, we could get 3 yards, 4 yards with these guys. Walker's going to turn 3 into 15 a lot more often, and we're happy with that. It could be as simple as that for the Chiefs.
Well, that's what's exciting too, is that Kareem Hunt visually, you watch him last year and you're just like, this is not great, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, success rate wise, actually not that bad.
Third and ones.
Right. He's still able to get that, just enough to get that successful run, right? Now combine that with Kenneth Walker, who's struggled from a success rate perspective, who then can also generate explosives like almost no other running back in the NFL can. And that could be it too. Yeah. Like you said, where there's a chance that this could be more. I think that what we're saying though is that from a production standpoint, so it's a plus for Kenneth Walker overall.
Yeah.
It should be a pretty good environment for him. Let's talk about Jalen Waddle going to Denver. There were some split opinions, at least from in the fantasy world. I have mine for sure, but I want to hear yours about his fit. If you think that, he just becomes the alpha immediately, how he works with Cortland Sutton, all that good stuff.
Yeah. For the Broncos perspective, I like it. From a fantasy perspective, I could definitely understand, there's a lot of mouths to feed over there. And I'm curious to know how the wide receiver core shakes out, because Troy Franklin emerged last year as a player. He's just inconsistent. Marvin Mims, I've always thought was underused, but I could just be, hanging on my priors for Mims. And I think he'll stick around at least because of the punt return value. Right. But I think they've found something with him the last year and a half. But I think the Waddle outside speed, yak ability combined with Cortland Sutton is great for the Broncos, great for Bo Nix. The question's going to be, okay, he's not going to have those old games where he has 12 catches for 40 yards like he used to have before Mike McDaniel got there.
Right.
He might just be this vertical threat. And, the Sean Payton deal, it's who knows week to week how he's going to feature guys. But I think Waddle, to me, offense is about having answers. And now they've got this vertical answer with a big bodied answer, and they still probably need to improve at tight end, but they've got way more answers on offense with Waddle there.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you at least get the versatility to move someone in and out. He can play everywhere in the formation. And, they have Pat Bryant at least showed a little bit. I thought they were going to feature Pat Bryant in that playoff game before he went down.
He had the first 3 targets right off the bat or whatever it was.
Yeah, legitimately, Pat Bryant was about to destroy in that game. And I do think that I have this feeling deep down that they think, or Sean Payton thinks that Bryant could be that not quite, but in that Michael Thomas type archetype of slot.
I thought you were going Marcus Colston, but
yeah, you can go Colston too.
Yeah.
It's all the same, right? There's just throw a big slot in there. But yeah, I mean, like they at least have all of these pieces where you can see how it would form together from a real football perspective. I think Waddle's good enough to still see a 24% target share, and if he's efficient enough on that, then he should be okay. And then the last one's DJ Moore going to Buffalo, where I mean, Buffalo over the last 5 years has, it's funny, the one bigger bodied guy that they went after was Keon Coleman. And a lot of folks, like Matt Harmon, for instance, charted him and said, no, this is a big slot. Like this is not,
slot.
Not a perimeter guy. All they've done is just get slot receiver after slot receiver. At least they get a guy that can move a little bit and do some things, but he's, a little bit older and not quite the same guy maybe that we saw 3 or 4 years ago. But how do you feel about DJ Moore in Buffalo?
Yeah, we joke on our show that they were building the offense just to beat the Chiefs, right?
Mm-hmm.
With a bunch of slots and, tight end hybrids to attack the middle of the field where the Chiefs are weaker. And they're really well equipped, Buffalo, to beat the Chiefs defense now. They have to beat other teams now too. But I think Moore's good in the short term. I mean, when you look at it holistically, the contract and being 27 million guaranteed 2 years from now, like that's not going to feel great. Right. I don't think if you're the Bills, given where Moore is in his career, but I still think he moves well enough. He is good running routes on the outside, getting in and out of breaks, runs the dig route, runs the deep out. I mean, those are just parts of the offense that the Bills have not had. So that's why they were trying to solve that problem. Maybe an expensive solution for them, giving up a 2 in the financials, especially given some of the other draft picks going around for star players. Moore's not really a star anymore. I mean, it's so good for the Bears that he could be expendable. They're not going to miss a beat, I don't think. Right. But that's not a knock on DJ Moore. I think he helps the Bills in the short term, gives them an outside answer. I just worry about him aging and what they've invested in. But for short term, I think they got better with that move. Do
you anticipate them spending something at wide receiver in the draft? Like doing like they have to have some sort of funnel coming in at wide receiver. They just don't have that much going on behind them at this point.
I wouldn't hate seeing them double up. I mean, I know we're going to talk about Denzel Boston later, and I see Bills fans already having PTSD because, he's big and Keon Coleman was big and they make contested catches. Therefore, they're the same guy. But the way you described Keon Coleman as the big slot, again, my guy Sam Monson, he was like, that's what he is. He's a big slot. Him and Harmon were in complete agreement about what Coleman is. He doesn't separate on the outside. And I do think Boston and some other guys in this draft can do that and can be had in the late first or maybe a flyer in the second. So
I said that on another show at one point. I was like, I don't even realize, like they could always trade back in or do something.
Yeah. I just hate doing that because I don't have everybody's exact draft capital off the top of my head. So I hate making mistakes because the internet exists. But you know what I mean? Like there are receivers to be had there. So yeah, I could see them doubling up, but I think this was like playing it safe for them, even though it's aggressive, which was like, let's not go through the draft in the right Jaden Higgins or whoever doesn't fall, and then we're in trouble. So they had to make a move.
Yeah, I mean, they're win now mode, so it makes sense to make that move to have something. All right, so since we're talking about the draft, let's talk about the draft. This class, when you look at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, if you were to just like rate it on a scale from 1 to 10, how would you rate the class in sum with those skill position players? And then what skill position do you think is best and worst?
Oh man, it's probably like a 4 in skill positions this year.
I mean, maybe go 3. Even.
Maybe 3. Yeah, I mean, it's poor because you don't have the elite blue chip talent. Yep. You don't have anybody that everybody says nodding. Like, yes, right. When the analytics people and the film people and everybody agree, and you just don't have that, right? So there's a lot of disagreement. Wide receiver always has elements of that because it's a unique position. But I think it's weak overall. I think receiver always has depth. Again, nature of the position, because you're finding that more than any other position, you're finding what a guy can do, not so much what they can't do, because you can dictate that football wise. You can't do that with an offensive tackle. You can't say, hey, you're a great pass blocker, just play on third down. So receiver, it always feels deep because you can play to players' strengths. And I think this class has a wide range of types always. Tight end. I know Dane Brugler and everybody's talking, this is the deepest tight end class in a while as far as depth and finding blockers deep in the draft. So tight end looks pretty good. So I'd say receiver and tight end. And then, I mean, QB and running back's just a mess, especially after last year's running back class where you can get a Cam Scattaboo in the 4th round. I mean, is he RB2 in this class?
Yeah.
He may have been, I mean, he was RB3 for me last year anyway, but in this class for sure, it's him behind Jeremiah Love. So QB and running back is probably as weak as we all think it is.
Yeah, no, I'm in complete agreement. And then you mentioned Jeremiah Love, consensus RB1. Do you think that, if you put on your GM hat, I know that from your perspective, you'd be more tied into this stuff than what I would be, but like, do you think that he's a lock for top 10 draft capital? And then if you look at recent memory, some of these running backs that have come out, Ashton Genty last year, you had Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs in that class. Where does he stack up with those guys? Like, do you think he's as good as an Ashton Genty, or is it like a slight tier below, or is he better? Like, where are you looking at him?
I think he's in that tier. I mean, I don't want to use too much hindsight. I think Bijan was the best. I probably thought Genty last year. I'm trying to be in this right headspace. I've got a model, but I've got my opinions and everything too. I think Genty was up there with Bijan, but Bijan just felt super special. Saquon, we know he's a 9. I've never seen a 9 for the old GM.
Yeah,
going at 2. I mean, Jeremiah loves that guy, right? Because he's got the big playability, incredible flexibility, bend. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. I mean, I think he has everything you want in a top 10. If a guy's going to go in the top 10, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Now the question is that worth it? We can debate that all day. I don't have all day. Yeah. I am trying to, JJ, see the other side of it as well. The idea of, if we go back and say, was Bijan worth it? There's a strong case that he's worth it for at 8 overall. There's a strong case that Jahmyr Gibbs has been worth it, but those guys also stepped into good offensive line situations, especially Gibbs, and he became. I think where I've come around to is if you're the fourth playmaker on your team, right? If you, like with the Lions, you got Amon-Ra and you got Sam Laporta and you got Jameson Williams, and then by the way, good luck covering Gibbs out of the backfield and dealing with his big playability. That's when I think you become kind of a force multiplier for the offense. And so that's the fear. The Ashton Genty just rolls in, hey, go save the Raiders offense. Yeah. Well, nobody can block and nobody can catch, so you can't do that. So that's the fear of taking the top 10 guy. But Love as a prospect looks like all of those guys, including Gibbs, a bigger version of Gibbs, with his speed. Yeah. So I think he's worth the top 10 pick through that lens.
Yeah. Do you anticipate it? You have Tennessee's there, the Giants, there's been rumors. You get Washington, who I think that's like the safest spot at this point is like a Washington, but like, Kansas City at 9 just signed Kenneth Walker. It seems like they would, it does not seem like the right use of resources if they were to get Love there, but do you think that he will go top 10?
I was shocked at how much smoke there was around Tennessee at 4 coming out of the combine.
Yeah.
I was shocked at that.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, but that is becoming the chalk pick for a team that has a wide receiver need,
right?
A multiple pass rush need. I mean, they've got needs at valuable positions. I was shocked at that. And then I know a lot of draft analysts are saying, well, if Washington with Rachaad White and the Saints with HN and the Chiefs with Ken Walker, I mean, they all know they're out on Jeremiah Love. They went to free agency, so they know something's happening at 4 or 5. And maybe that's true. Mm. So I'm kind of buying into he's not making it out of the top 10. But if he does, like if the Titans are smart, I don't think they make the move. If the Giants are smart, I don't think they make the move with Tyrone Tracy and Scatterbo. I think they have a perfect running back.
What's wrong? Yeah, what is wrong? That's what I can't understand. What is wrong with that backfield? I mean, I understand the injury, but like aside from that, is there really? I mean, is that not the right kind of tandem?
That's how we would draw it up, right? Like that's how we would draw it up. Right. If you're a team picking in the top 10 and you have 2 first contract running backs who were both picked after round 3 or later,
right?
It's a perfect scenario.
Right.
It's one of the cheapest running back rooms, and they're both pretty good and they're complementary.
Right.
It's perfect for the Giants. And so now if that happens, then it's interesting because Washington, like I could see them talking themselves into, I get into this force multiplier thing where if you have Jaden Daniels and you have Jeremiah Love, like there's something to having the running quarterback and the big play running back together, but they're 3 deep at running back as well. So I don't know if there's a perfect fit for him, but at the end of the day, I still think someone picks him in the top 10 because they say, this is the best player in the draft.
Right.
There's no other blue chips in this draft. You take the best player.
That's the thing. Like if there is a draft where a running back would go early, it's probably this one. But
it's gotta be.
Because there's just not that much of that high end talent that you're like obviously trying to make that expected value calculation. It's just like, there's gonna be a team out there. It's just like, I don't care. I'm just getting the guy at the top of my board, which, I go on and on about that kind of.
And real quick, like it's funny because I know enough people in front offices, like they know better.
Yeah.
But they're also dealing with owners.
Right.
And they're all like, there's those are real things.
Yep.
Where owners are like, well, this guy's they're going to see his face 20 times a game.
Right.
We're going to sell tickets, and he's safe, and we know he's going to be good, and we don't want to back up tackle or develop. So I kind of get it, but like those are real conversations.
To me, that's the Tennessee angle, probably, right? Like,
yeah.
It's just like, let's just get this dynamic player and just see what happens. But the problem that I see is we just saw this happen with Ashton Genty last year, where it can go south very, very fast.
Yes.
And that would be the overall fear. You mentioned that the running back class is pretty weak. Do you have an RB2? Like when you're sitting there looking at this class, like, is there a guy that stands out to you, or is it kind of like I don't mind this guy, I'll throw him at the RB2 spot, but there's a lot of other guys who can probably be there too?
So I know Jadarian Price. I mean, that's a fascinating story, both coming out of the same backfield. I know everybody's got Jadarian. Well, the consensus has Jadarian Price. I like Jonah Coleman.
Nice.
From Washington. I liked him before last year. I did college fantasy actually for the first time last year, and I crushed it, man. My summer scouting, Jonah Coleman and Omar Cooper. I had some dudes in my summer scouting that I drafted in college fantasy. So I feel great about the work I did last summer and being early on Cooper and, Coleman. I think, he's a smooth athlete. He's tough to tackle. Slowed down a little bit, had some injuries, banged up at the end of last year, but I think he's the second best running back in this class. Yeah,
look, from an analytical perspective, because I'm coming at it from a production profile and, digging into market share numbers and stuff, and receiving metrics are really important from a model perspective, because I'm using draft capital as an input as well, and projected draft capital. And that usually tends to capture a lot of the rushing production, just because we know that rushing production is relatively replaceable. But Jonah Coleman's been a really interesting player in his production profile is great. His receiving profile is strong. Like he's got that Doug Martin, kind of compact frame to him. The only thing, has he tested yet? Did he opt not to, like, even at pro day? Like, I guess my question to you would be like, is there any question for you about his general athleticism and what he might bring to the table, or is what you watched of him enough?
Yeah, I think he's good enough athletically. I want to see, because I'm in the middle of catching up who tested, who didn't.
Yeah, I know.
I don't see any
the pro day stuff. Yeah, it's fine if you don't have the answer,
and I've got some of the, some of the on-field athleticism measures and speeds. Don't love them.
Yeah,
and so that's it's a valid concern.
Yeah,
but I just think he's a good smooth runner. It's not full like David Montgomery. I don't care about his long speed, because he'll be great up to 15 yards. And then, every now and again you reel off a 40. He's not that type of player, but I usually, I didn't care about Scadaboo's long speed or anything, but I think he's good enough in between.
Right.
Up to 20 yards. I think that's kind of where Coleman is as a player.
For adults with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms, every choice matters. Tremfya offers self-injection or intravenous infusion from the start. Tremfya is administered as injections under the skin or infusions through a vein every 4 weeks, followed by injections under the skin every 4 or 8 weeks. If your doctor decides that you can self-inject Tremfya, proper training is required. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease and adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Explore what's possible. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more, or visit tremfyaradio.com.
This message is brought to you by Apple Card. Apple Card members can earn unlimited daily cash back on everyday purchases wherever they shop. This means you could be earning daily cash on just about anything, like a slice of pizza from your local pizza place or a latte from the corner coffee shop. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app to see your credit limit offer in minutes. Subject to credit approval. Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com.
With Jadarian Price, I find this to be just like a really interesting story. Like you said, I mean, two guys out of the same backfield. I just tried to find comps in general, at least dating back to 2011, which is what I date all my prospect work back to. And the easiest one to go to was I guess Bijan and Roshan, but even Roshan wasn't, he's not a day two guy, whereas Jadarian Price looks like he's going to be a day two guy. Do you have concerns about his game? Like, because look, his production profile is absolutely egregious for obvious reasons, right? So it's harder to model this kind of player than a lot of other players. I have like teammate score in there, and it's looking at, where Jeremiah Love would be drafted and how that would impact Janarian Price and such. But are there any concerns on your end about like his receiving work or I've heard that he's terrible in pass pro, or how others have viewed him in pass pro. Those are the kinds of things that, yes, I'm looking at, but I'm more concerned about like what type of receiving profile could this guy necessarily have at the next level, because that's going to obviously drive a lot of the fantasy production. If this player, if Price is a early down, big play type player, an explosive runner, and there's not that much of that upside from a receiving perspective, that scares the crap out of me, like for a lot of reasons. Like, is that what you see from him, or do you think that he could become more of that 3-down guy?
The receiving thing is so tough for running backs if they don't have opportunities. I mean, he's got 19 targets in his entire career.
Right.
And then even the pass pro stuff that you mentioned, last year at this time, we were saying, hey, Travion Henderson looks like the best pass blocking running back we've ever seen. Then he gets on the field and it's not a physical thing. It's a mental thing. Like, you get a scan linebacker to linebacker, and it's a who we really don't know. And so it's more of an unknown. And I know you think analytically, I think analytically. My whole process is like eliminate as many unknowns as possible.
Exactly.
And so there probably are too many. I mean, the real timeshare thing you got to go back to is Cadillac Williams and Ronnie Brown both going in the top 5, which was unreal.
Yeah.
Ronnie Brown going 2, and Cadillac Williams, who was more hyped than Ronnie Brown, went 5. Like, he was the bigger recruit and the bigger name at Auburn. The fact that they had 2 backs go in the top 5 is
crazy,
unbelievable. So yeah, I've got concerns about what he could do because you haven't seen it from a pass game perspective, but he's been an awesome change of pace for Jeremiah Love. And before I knew he was going to be that good, I kept saying, could you guys run Jeremiah a little bit more? Every time he touches the ball, great things happen. But Price held his own. And I think that might be the thing that you hang your hat on, is like, he was good enough to keep Love off the field at times, right? He was, instead of them saying, hey, here's 25 carries to this top 10 pick. But there are some concerns about the 3-down nature because you just haven't seen it enough.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen some mocks from big name analysts, like end of the first, early second round with Price. Do you think
I can't do it?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I mean, I have my own model too, and I'm modeling for different things, but essentially we're trying to model production, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I just use a 0 to 100 system. I want to see 90s, like the 90s translate.
Yeah.
And he's like a mid-tier type of guy.
Yeah.
And in running back, you talk about the fantasy community versus the scouting community. The fantasy community has done a great job of finding running backs and figuring out what works and what doesn't. And if there are any concerns, like, they're usually valid. There's not a whole lot of outliers. There's not many sleepers anymore in this data-driven world. And I think there's too many unknowns in this entire class.
Yeah.
Beyond Love, and Coleman's the only guy that stands out to me as like, he's at least been productive enough that he'd be the guy I could take a shot on in, round 3, say, or whatever it might be.
And usually it seems like the running backs that do pan out that were kind of out of nowhere are dust after year 1, like Dameon Pierce or or even potentially like a Kyle Manung guy, potentially, right? Like, he ran hard and he's fun to watch, and I get all that, but like, realistically, long term, who knows what the Bears would, how they would view him.
That's what we thought Pacheco. We thought Pacheco, like, oh, you had a great rookie season. He'll be the guy for the next 3 years. And he slowed down quite a bit. Right. And so, like, I think there's a reason why the draft capital was following the way that it did. Janarian Price, just interesting. I mean, his top statistical comp in the ZAP model was Ronald Jones. And so that's just another reason why I'm just like, oh my gosh, I just can't. Oh, Ronald should have been so good. And he wasn't.
I just can't right now. Are there any day 3 backs that you think are undervalued? Like, a guy that we didn't talk about was like Emmett Johnson, for instance, who has an interesting receiving profile, or Mike Washington, who destroyed the combine. Maybe they go day 2, or any deep players in this not so great running back class.
Mike Washington he's awful in my numbers.
Yeah.
Because, I look at a player's entire career through different lenses and everything. And he wasn't good till this final year, but like, it's one of those things, like, I get it. Like, I see him last year. He looked so much better. I struggle with that. What do you do with improvement on a player, right? Versus, doing it for their whole career. When you asked this question, you sent me, I print out my questions.
Look at you going old school.
I'm a hard copy guy. I got hard copies.
I love it.
I got my draft board. I got the questions.
I love it.
Kentucky's Seth McGowan, another one of my college fantasy players who moves really well, 220 plus, had incredible workout numbers. He's a pretty good runner. Like, he's pretty good, like nifty footwork and everything. I kind of like him. Like, my model doesn't necessarily love him, but I like him eye test wise. And, you know, if you're going to take a chance, you don't always just bet on traits, as people say, or bet on workout numbers. But he feels like, hey, athleticism that translates, shows up on the field. He's a pretty good runner. He's fierce at the second level, finishing plays. I like McGowan from Kentucky.
You know, it's funny because I do 3 statistical comps in the prospect guide and for each profile. And he had 2 that were pretty awful, right? Because part of his problem analytically is that he's old, right? He's an older back. He's like, I think he might even be 25, or he's at least close. But one of them was David Johnson that came
there you go.
for McGowan.
Yeah, he's too, the age thing always.
It's hard right now too. It's hard with NIL stuff and transfer rule stuff. And I still think there's a trickle of the COVID season and how that impacted things still. So
for sure.
It's definitely tough. The age side of things right now.
One good comp is like, I had a JJ Putz comp one time from Baseball Prospectus, and every other comp was terrible, but I had one JJ Putz. So there is some world where I'm still I'm finishing up my career as a major league closer. So hold on to your best comps, kids.
Oh, it's so good. All right, let's talk about wide receivers because it is better than the running back class. Do you see this class as having a big 3? Is there any other wide receiver that would pop in or maybe drop out? How do you view the top of the position?
Who are your big 3?
That's
Jordan
what I'm saying.
Tyson,
so it's
Makai Lemon.
I think I've anchored myself to what was being talked about like a month ago as a Tate, Lemon, Tyson big 3 as the way that it seemed like consensus was kind of speaking, but now Tyson has had medicals and like people aren't as into him, or some folks are really into Concepcion, or Boston I've seen be high on board. So just talk to me about the top of the position and where you have these guys.
Yeah. So it's a fascinating group because like I was saying a little while ago, wide receiver, just by its nature, you lean into what they can do more than what they can't do. Not that you don't, hey, this guy can't separate. That's an issue. But it's just it's a position where you could see the good in a player. And then you got to figure out how you value that. Like Makai Lemon's a great football player. Mm-hmm. How do I value that? I think we're all he's a great slot. He's got excellent hands, contested catches, probably can't play on the outside. How do you value that? Is that a top 15 pick in the NFL? Is that a second rounder for certain teams? Because you have to have a high volume slot position on your team, and you might not. So big 3 wise, I kind of agree. I think Omar Cooper's sneaking in there. I mean,
Cooper's
I've seen him. Yeah. He's just sneaking in like top 12 and top 13 and top 15 and mock drafts and everything. I love Carnell Tate. I'll just start with that. When I watch Tate, I think he does everything well. Good size, ball skills. When you watch as a fan, like when I'm watching throughout the season, I'm like, oh, look, contested catches. And then you go back and watch the film and he's got like 3 steps on the corner and Julian Saint's underthrowing him and he's still making the play. So I think Tate, I walked away watching him thinking he's just good at everything. Route running, gets off press, ball skills. I like Tate a lot. I think Tyson and Concepcion are similar to me because they're just so dynamic and twitchy and athletic. And then you have questions, right? More questions for Concepcion because he doesn't catch the ball well at all. Yeah. But with Tyson, the injuries, there's like something missing to his game where I just don't think he's an elite prospect. But then you add in the injury component, it's real. I mean, it's a real thing. Missing time, not necessarily recovering from last year's hamstring injury. That's a concern for Tyson. And then Makai Lemon, again, Sam and I on our show talk about this all the time, like Emeka Ibuka last year. Yeah. There's certain players that think everyone will have the same scouting report per se. Like, here's what this player is. And then people will be all over the place with where you think that, what's that worth? Right. What is that worth? I think Ibuka was fine at pick 20 or whatever it was last year. And I think Lemon in the top 15, perfectly fine with that. But some people are going to say, you can't take a slot only, in the top 15. That's a second round player. So I think Lemon's going to be a great player, just needs the opportunities. And I like him quite a bit. I want to dig into the slot aspect of Lemon and just in general, like, because Ibuka was another player last year, as you said, who like a lot of people were profiling as a slot. I remember like Robert Woods was one of his top comps in the Zap model and such. But in my opinion, he landed in a spot where the Buccaneers over the last 5 or 6 years have shown us that they don't really care about how like they've used Chris Godwin inside out. They used Jalen McMillan inside out when McMillan came out as what we thought was definitely a pure slot.
And then they do the same thing with Ibuka, where him coming out, where they're doing the New York Giants thing, man. They're doing the Buffalo Bills thing, where they're just grabbing all these what we think are slots, and then they're, playing on the outside, and they're able to develop on the outside. Like, do you think that can happen for a Mekhi Lemon? Like, my sort of like philosophy analytically has always been, and just process wise, because JSN you could throw in this discussion to a degree as well, because he was, he played a lot in the slot in college. But like a team spending that kind of capital, would you agree would then likely want to use the guy in a full-time capacity in some way? Like, is that the way that we should be viewing this? And maybe there are some struggles for Lemon on the outside whenever he transitions to the NFL, but at least he would be there from like a volume perspective or just like a route run perspective to be able to get some of that production that in other spots he might not be able to get if he didn't have that draft capital.
Yeah, it's a great question, right? Because I think, you're going to have some sort of assumption that teams are going to have a plan, which is why the people who are like, of course you draft running backs in the first round, they all run for X number of yards. It's like, yeah, of course they were first round running backs. They're going to get fed. We have to confirm our priors. We have to. So there's definitely that element with Lemon. And I would rather position it as, I would assume like if the Rams are going to take him and he, they use tight splits and they've, Puka was a slot outside hybrid and Lemon's a smaller version of that, but like you can make it work, right? So I would assume the team is going to make it work. And it might not be forced X receiver reps necessarily, because the thing about Lemon is the Notre Dame game where they have Leonard Moore, who's like 6'2", pterodactyl, future top 10 pick, and he's pressing Mekhi Lemon. And they pressed him over 30 times in that game. And early on, Lemon's winning. He whooped Moore on a slant and twice. One was a catch and run. One he just didn't get targeted. But after that point, as soon as Moore got hands on with his length, like Lemon was done. Like your speed disappears. You have no more quickness. And I think Lemon has just such great crispness and, to his routes and everything. Like he's a very, very good football player. But this is like a very specific, if you ask him to be an outside receiver against long NFL corners, it's probably going to be a challenge. Mm-hmm. But I'll assume that the drafting team also knows that. Yeah. That they're going to move, Z receiver, move him around, move him in the slot, and he'll get his volume. So I think he's going to be an excellent, productive NFL football player.
For adults with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms, every choice matters. Tremfya offers self-injection or intravenous infusion from the start. Tremfya is administered as injections under the skin or infusions through a vein every 4 weeks, followed by injections under the skin every 4 or 8 weeks. If your doctor decides that you can self-inject Tremfya, proper training is required. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease and adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Explore what's possible. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
You know how it's never really about where you're going, it's about who you're going with? Like, the destination could be totally average, but if the right people are there, it becomes a great memory. Toyota really gets that. Toyota designs vehicles around real life and real people, the ones who bring everyone together and somehow make the drive part of the fun. There's room for all the stuff that comes with togetherness: luggage, golf clubs, camping gear, plus comfortable seating, smart layouts, and space that lets everyone relax. And Toyota's lineup makes it easy to find your match. The RAV4 is perfect for everyday adventures. The Grand Highlander brings serious space for up to 8 with generous legroom and expansive cargo space. The Highlander also has space for up to 8. It's ready for big moments and spontaneous ones, balancing style and flexibility. And the Sienna is built for everyday life. Carpools, road trips, snacks, spills. And it even has a built-in vacuum for when things get a little too messy. Because when people are the destination, your ride is important. Learn more at toyota.com and find the vehicle that fits your people.
And then with Jordan Tyson, it does seem like I'm reading mocks and seeing how people, like, now that the prospect guide is out, my takes are out there. So now I want to see what other people are saying, right? Yeah. And with Tyson, there's a lot of phrasing of this guy would be and it sounds like you're not quite there as like this guy would be the consensus wide receiver one, in this class, if not for the medicals. My thing though with this is like, I just don't know how to measure the medicals, right? I don't know if anyone necessarily does, right?
Yeah.
And it's just a tough thing to wrap my head around. I'm sure you too, to a degree, being an analytical minded person, where, Tyson had the knee injury and he came back, I think his junior season was the best age. I mean, I think objectively, the best age adjusted productive season of this entire class. Like that season was just incredible. And then he gets hurt again, of course. It was a collarbone that year. But like he bounced back. He showed that bounce back ability, but now there's this hamstring, and what's that all going to look like? My question though is that, like, do you think he has just as high of a ceiling or a higher ceiling than these other guys? Like, is that part of what you're seeing with him? Or do you really think that he's part of that Carnell Tate, Mekhi Lemon tier, if you will, but he's just going to be knocked down because of the medicals? So like his talent level would be the same as these other guys, obviously different wide receivers, but the medicals would be what would just naturally push him down.
Yeah, I think he's in that top tier talent wise and production wise, or projected production wise. The medical piece is absolutely something.
Yeah.
All you can do, I mean, we're going to do this on our show. I'm trying to think of all the scenarios that we sat there and debated forever years ago. Saquon at 2, or Joe Alt versus Malik Neighbors for the Chargers. Who should you draft, tackle or receiver? And I want to go back and like rehash some of these stories. Like, what did we say at the time? What ended up happening? But the injury one is something too. Like, how many bright red injury, crosses have we seen next to a player's name? And did it work? Or this guy's got chronic knee, chronic shoulder, degenerative hip, or whatever it was. And interesting looking back, like, we thought this was a big deal, and this guy played 10 years or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But we don't know. Like, we don't really know. And then you get into it, and it's like, well, some teams care and some teams don't. We get into the Max Crosby failed physical thing. Like, some teams going to care, some teams not going to care. Or maybe whatever the Ravens did. So, like, I've talked to teams where this guy's off our board, and then he's on their team 5 years later.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it is tough when you don't know. But again, when you're talking about, I like to eliminate uncertainty.
Yeah.
That's where there's some uncertainty here. And until we know, it's a bit of a question mark.
Yeah. I mean, if you ever do that and go through a lot of that medical stuff, like I think it's fascinating, because it just seems like it's just this like generally accepted fact, you know, of like, oh, the hamstring. Oh, they have medicals. They're bad.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know how often this stuff actually ends up mattering in the way that we speak about it. There was the Concepcion knee scope that happened recently. And I got a question on a show, like, are you concerned? And I'm like, if this happened to an NFL player, no one would even remotely
off-season knee scope.
Yeah, right. It happens all the time, Yeah. And so like, it's just a really interesting balance, because what I'm basically getting at, and yes, the model loves Jordan Tyson. So I'm trying to poke holes in this to make sure that I am well-rounded with the take, right? But part of this for me with the injury stuff with Tyson is just like, yeah, I don't know how much I'm supposed to be weighing this stuff. I don't know how much this stuff matters. And we got to try to figure this out, at least like in an objective way, so that we can approach it right, moving forward. But,
yeah, it's tough, man.
Yeah, it's really, really difficult. Let's talk about Denzel Boston. Kind of touched on him for a second. In your eyes, is he closer to those guys we just talked about? And you can talk about Omar Cooper here too, because I think it's in from a projected draft capital standpoint, kind of in that same area. But is Boston closer to those earlier round guys, or closer to the bigger bodied, Chris Bell, Chris Brazzell type players that might go round 2?
It's such an interesting group of names. I would say Boston's closer to the top.
Okay.
But the reason why Bell and Brazzell are lower, Bell's injury.
Right.
And I don't know if you've gone around, I hate doing this, but the Brazzell character information is...
I haven't dug into the Brazzell.
It's more like, I don't dig into it.
Yeah, I didn't even realize, with Brazzell.
And in my world, where I'm not looking for it, it only comes up when it's really bad.
Right.
And the few times it's been really bad have been Jermaine Burton, who I loved as a football player, but knew it was bad off field. And Pierce. Like, those are the couple names that have come up over the last couple of years. So that's Brazzell. They're big-bodied, really athletic people. I think Boston's a very good receiver.
Yeah.
He's a very good receiver. And I know every time we put him in a mock to Buffalo and fans are like, PTSD, no, this is the next Keon Coleman. Like, he is not Keon Coleman. He's an outside receiver who moves well, with really good ball skills, with really good hands. And for a 6'4", 212 pounder, he's better at the movement and all the things that you think he might be slow. I mean, remember there was a time in the early 2000s where every next big receiver was going to be like next great receiver was going to be 6'4" and 220. It was like the new age of receiver, and half of them became Calvin Johnson or that, great. Half of them became great, or Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones. And then the other ones were just big, slow, and couldn't separate. Like there was no middle ground, right? And so I think you get that sense, like it's either this guy's the next star or he can't separate. And Boston's like somewhere in between. Like he's just I came away watching Carnell Tate thinking he's good at everything. He's just good, like good feel for the game, works back to the ball, like subtleties of the position. I think Boston has that. Good scramble drill. I thought he was a good fit for Mahomes. Yeah. I think he's got a great feel when the play breaks down, just for finding space. And I always thought he'd be like, if the Chiefs took him at 29, I think that'd be a really good fit for Kansas City for what they need. So I like Boston. I think he's not Keon Coleman. Right. He's not N'Keal Harry. I'd say he's closer to Cortland Sutton than he is either of those two guys.
That was the top two comps in the model were Jaden Higgins and Cortland Sutton. So it's that,
Good. Yeah. I liked Higgins too. I think he's going to be fine. Yeah. Every time he was open, he got overthrown last year. So he'll be fine. I think that's fair for Boston. So he's a first round player.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you in or out on Zachariah Branch? This one's really interesting to me.
I had to go back and rewatch more of him. I got to be out on him. I think he's too slot machiney. I think he's too
gadgety.
Yeah, he just is. So the gadget thing's interesting. Like when I was watching Puka a few years ago, he never looked athletic at BYU. Mm-hmm. There was some in-game athleticism numbers that loved him. And by the way, the Rams are like all in on those metrics and they got him. But I remember watching Puka thinking he doesn't feel athletic, but they're giving him jet sweeps.
Yeah. And around.
And yeah. And I always thought that there's signal in that but that's like when a regular receiver is doing that, not when your whole game is built around that. Yeah. That's when I have concerns. So I don't think Branch does enough true wide receiver things to feel great about his projection.
When you do and look, I get really tilted by like the threshold analysis that we see on Twitter all the time with analytics and stuff. And to be fair, a lot of that is in the prospect guide, but the problem with a lot of the threshold stuff is that people will just take the minimum number for that player, right? Yeah. And like they're not capturing the proper sample for it. But if you look at players who like Zach Branch from if you at least look back to 2020 and look at some PFF data and like behind the line of scrimmage target share and stuff and target rate and stuff like that, for day 2 picks, he's literally an outlier and it's in a really bad way. It's the Anthony Schwartzes of the world and the Malachi Corleys and all these players who just, they're fun to watch and they're exciting, but it's just not, there's not the type that translate very well. It's funny that you brought up the like sort of manufactured rushing work and touches that way, because the ZAT model wide receiver factors in rushing production. It caps it. Like we don't need 500 rushing yards. Just were they used in this extra way? Because it's likely a talent signal of they're trying to get in the ball in these unique ways, as long as there is that, general like wide receiver, you're just a normal wide receiver profile. Like Ladd McConkey had that, there's players in this class, Omar Cooper's has it a little bit. In this class, Skylar Bell had one season where he had like 160 rushing yards, 1 year. So there's some of that goes, but when you get to this in this kind of archetype, you start to get into like the only guys that have really like hit, if you will, are Wan'Dale Robinson and Luther Burden. But both of those guys had much better like age adjusted production. Like they were fantastic immediately in college.
Burden's entire career wasn't that, right? It almost went at the end. He was more
his
manufactured touches.
His was bizarre. His they just didn't know how to use him in college, and you had to my model loved him just because the age adjusted. His sophomore season was incredible. But it was like he was used like Wan'Dale Robinson, which is crazy because he just doesn't need to be used that way.
And Wan'Dale, we didn't know what he could do until this year when they started running him up the seam, and Russ and Jameis were willing to throw the ball to him in those situations. And the other guy that the pre-data era, Ted Ginn, when he came out of Ohio State, he felt very manufactured touch at Ohio State. And I remember thinking, well, this is like this top recruit. He was supposed to be like the number 1 receiver or corner in his recruiting class. And he goes to Ohio State and he felt very gimmicky. And I'm like, if he's this good, even just as a fan, I'm thinking if he's this good, I feel like he should do more receiver things. And I always felt like they were just trying to get the ball in his hands, and it was too much.
Yeah.
And I get that sense with Branch. I wonder, he's got good punt return ability and everything. It just feels more like a third or later round pick. And I don't know if there's that role. Like, I don't think there's that role in the NFL where for a second round gadget players.
Yeah, you at least need the development. You could even throw like Curtis Samuel in that bucket, like where
that's a good one.
Someone who just needs, like, he got better, right? Like, we got to give him props for just becoming a better player and being able to do more than what he showed like as a prospect and how he was deployed as a prospect. And maybe that happens with Zach Branch, but I mean, he's getting Mecole Hardman comps right now, and it's a little bit scary, Oh
man, I liked Hardman a little bit at Missouri. Man. I'll throw the late Rondale Moore as another guy that I struggled with. I mean, he was super small.
Yep.
But how many times did you say, well, this is the most dynamic player on the field?
Oh, crazy production.
But can he play actual receiver? And I think, that was always a struggle, plus all the injuries, of course.
Definitely. Is there any wide receiver, just general value that you see in this class that we haven't talked about?
So it's funny because really quick on Omar Cooper.
Yeah.
I mean, he came into the season as wide receiver 2 to Elijah Surratt at Indiana. And Cooper caught my eye watching 24 film because he averaged over 20 yards per catch. He only had 30 catches or something like that, but he was making plays down the field. And then this year they use him after the catch. Like, he was featured more this year.
Yep.
But Surratt was the number 1.
Yep.
And I still think he's pretty good. I think he's a good player. I think he's not the most athletic guy. He looked a little bit quicker this year than I think in previous years. He had a big catch and run against Oregon in the first game. I think showed, he's moved better this year than he was previously. He's great in contested situations, and Mendoza trusted him a lot. So I like Surratt as, a mid-round type of guy. And Eric McAllister out of TCU.
Love that.
I've always, because the models I model for college teams for the portal. So I do some college advising and NFL draft consulting for NFL teams. And I've been doing the portal thing for like 3 years, and he's always like at the top. I've been watching him at the top of my lists for a while now, and he's still, I think, underrated, physical catch and run type of guy. So I like McAllister. There may have been some character questions on him too, but he pops for me as well. Yeah, no, I have breakout scores, my main metric at wide receiver, and he was top 5 in the class, amongst, Tyson and Tate and Lemon. And, we got to compare models here, JJ. We got to see where things converge. We do, man. We do. The McAllister thing is interesting. Yeah. He did have like a gun charge, like a couple years ago. Is that what? Yeah. Yeah. So there was some, again, I try to avoid, not even finding out about that stuff, but I'm not going to dig for stuff. If it comes to you, you have it, but then you have uneven character information on players. You only have the negative. So it's tough to weigh that. That's where I'm just like, let's just see what happens in the draft. Isaiah Bond goes undrafted last year, and then you're like, okay, all right, well then there's stuff going on here. Right. All right. 2 questions real quick. Tight end really fast. Kenyon Sadiq, Eli Stowers. Do you feel like they're close? Do you think Sadiq is kind of in his own tier in this class? Like, I've been looking at, it seems like the fantasy community is higher on Stowers than what consensus mock drafts are generally showing, where he's like 50th overall in a lot of these, where there are some people who just like him more than Sadiq straight up. So I'm curious where you're at with the tight ends in the top of this class. I do like Stowers. I think my friend Mike Renner, former PFFer, currently at CBS, he's just straight calling him a wide receiver. He's just saying he's a 6'4", 230-pound wide receiver, and he runs 4.51, which is reasonable for that size. He just can't block, right? And right, you're not. There's no fantasy points for blocking, but we know that there's signal and just getting on the field and everything. And I think that would be the struggle for Stowers is, he has to be a move tight end, big slot. So there's a role for him. You just have to carve the role for him. I think he's an excellent receiver, though. Really productive, ball skills, athletic, body control. So I like him a lot. Sadiq is fascinating because he's got power to block, and he's got some incredible run blocks on film, but he's small relative to other wide tight ends. So he also might be in more of a Brock Bowers, move tight end, slot type of role. The other thing with Sadiq, like, he just doesn't have a ton of pure route running reps either at Oregon. Like, a lot of his highlight reel is just running through busted coverages, but he's really athletic. He's good after the catch. He's jacked. I want to see him at running back. I want to see Sadiq, the Debo comps that everybody throws around. I want to see Sadiq in the backfield for somebody. I don't know if he's got the instincts to do it, but I'd love to see if the 240-pounder could just be like a change of pace runner, because that breaks defenses. because it's tough to match up when a receiver or tight end goes into the backfield. That's why the Debo thing was so successful. So I like Sadiq as a first rounder. I think Stowers, it's like Harold Fannin last year.
Yeah.
Like I kind of want to come out of the draft with him on my team.
Yeah.
I'd prefer that it was in the third round, but I think it could be in the second. So I like Stowers as much as I liked Fannin last year, which is, I want this guy. I think he'll be a receiving weapon, but Sadiq is a better, I'd say, all-around player. Therefore, there has to be some separation between the two.
Yeah, that's how our model sees it too. All right, last question before I let you go. Give me a hot take for this year's NFL draft.
All right, non-fantasy related is, man, I don't think I want to draft Arvell Reese in the top.
Okay.
Again, I'm an uncertainty guy. He hasn't done it on the edge yet. David Bailey and Reuben Bain have. So I'd rather have those guys than Arvell Reese. And Reese is 20 and is projectable and does all these great things. He's just, I don't know if I want to convert him to an edge rusher and project that. So
awesome.
Is that hot enough? I don't have hot takes here, JJ.
No, I don't do hot takes either. I just always on the show to make people feel uncomfortable about a take that they, have to throw out there on the show. But man, this was great. I appreciate your
Good timing. The kids have broken in.
Yeah, look, you and I are East Coast dads, and I get it. I get it.
Yeah, it's all part of it.
But before you go, let everyone know where they can find you, what you're working on, all that great stuff.
Yeah, shows Check the Mic anywhere you listen to your podcast. We're on YouTube. Check the Mic. We're gonna have a little home and home. We'll have you breaking down the running backs with us. So that's all I'm working on right now. A bunch of secret stuff for NFL and college teams as a consultant. But
awesome.
That's it.
Awesome, man. Oh, I appreciate your time. I appreciate the analysis. I think others will as well. As always, guys, check out lateround.com. Make sure you're checking out the prospect guide. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in.
It's tax season, and by now, we're all a bit tired of numbers. But here's an important one you need to hear. $16 billion. That's how much money in refunds the IRS flagged for possible identity fraud. But it's not all grim news. LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second and alerts you to threats you could easily miss on your own. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it. Guaranteed. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/iHeart. Terms apply.
Any way you enjoy Taco Bell's crispy chicken nuggets is the right way to enjoy them. And now there's a new way inside a Crunchwrap Slider. The all-white meat crispy chicken nuggets you love with your choice of creamy chipotle or jalapeno honey mustard sauce inside a slider-sized Crunchwrap. Iconic. The new crispy chicken Crunchwrap Slider with creamy chipotle or jalapeno honey mustard sauce. A brand new classic. Only at Taco Bell. At participating Taco Bell stores for a limited time only. While supplies last. Contact store for participation which varies.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.